Welcome back to Church Leadership and Administration. We're in Unit 14 this week. We're talking about risk management. Now, I have been told I could be the king of worst case scenarios, so I'm not going to try to scare you out of ministry this week, but I do want to present you with some content that's going to help you consider protecting your people. Dr. Alan Jackson and myself did a book called Protect. It was a resource designed for age-graded people in the youth and children's space to just consider navigating risk. We wanted a layman's guide, if you will, that you could read with your people, 100 pages that was just simple to walk through. Doing the research for that and teaching a course specifically called risk management, but knowing that most people would not take the elective risk management, we wanted you in this course to have a flyover of risk management issues. Any given week, something can go wrong. Any given week, something can happen with people. It can happen with facilities on your property or your property extended. So it could be, what property extended means is not just your church property, but you had a Sunday school party at so-and-so's house. And so the property may have extended to their house if it was a published event, well, on behalf of the church. Or maybe it was a retreat center that you rented, and so the church extended on a distance, maybe a mission trip. And so you can start seeing how this gets to be a little more complicated. There's insurance that's involved in what we do. There's finances involved in what we do. And every week, I'm getting people that need some advice, that their church has found themselves in a situation they didn't see coming. Some of that is money's missing. Some of that is their building is in disrepair and they just don't know how to afford the maintenance. Some of it is they have some risk when it comes to age-graded ministry. That I have ministers that call that my people don't want to do background checks, or they don't think we need to remodel space to be more safe and secure when it comes to children. And so looking at that mission of every week, we want to be shepherds that provide protection for our people. We want to protect them from outside harm. We want to protect them from inside harm, because harm can be from within the church, unfortunately. We can have people in the body of Christ who are coming every week to the church, but yet we see problem there. It shouldn't surprise us. I mean, we even saw a problem with Judas, right? Jesus, from the disciples, chose 12. He brought them up on the mountainside. He called them out. He commissioned them and made them apostles. And of those 12, we have Judas, who from within the disciples caused great harm. And so over money, he sold Jesus 30 pieces of silver. And so it should not surprise us that even someone that is committed to the cause, that has seen firsthand the Lord work in and through his people, someone actually could cause harm. And so as we walk through this, I want you to understand that concept of shepherding and the critical aspect of character. A critical component of character. And in our culture and our society, it's going to be very important that you have a process to vet the volunteers, because we have people that know how to dress the part, and we know how people that come and want to be involved in ministry, but there are some considerations to the people involved in ministry. So you need, write this down, a process for vetting volunteers. I don't have time this week to unpack that totally for you, but some type of volunteer application, and you can download a sample from Brotherhood Mutual. Maybe you need to look at if minors should be involved watching minors. Yes, you heard me right, minors watching minors. And most people are like, we don't let kids watch kids. No, but you'll let a 16-year-old help in the nursery, in the baby room sometimes with their mom, and that's a minor with a minor. They're not 18. And so as you walk through this, there are many aspects that you have to consider for your church in vetting the volunteers. So I always start in looking at a potential volunteer with their testimony. What are their qualifications? What are they like online and in person to see if there's any discrepancies? It's always good to have a position description to let them know what's expected of them, but also looking at their character, of their work ethic, their reputation in areas of life. And so just walk through that. And not only that, in shepherding the people, there's some things that we need to be aware of. Some of the things that we may have done in ministry even a few years ago may not be what we need to be doing now. As you look at group games, I have talked to several people in ministry and icebreaker type games to where you have people co-ed getting very close to one another, and in a mob of people touching and inappropriate things can happen. And so you just want to be aware of those protective procedures, that you don't create an environment for harm, that you create an environment where people can come, learn about Jesus, engage in a relationship with Him by accepting Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior, and then following after Him and being discipled. And so as you walk through that, all those things that you are doing, there are all kinds of things when I was growing up that we did in North Alabama that were just epic. From mattress surfing and hood sledding and pasture skiing. I mean, yeah, pasture skiing, you take the fins off a pair of skis, and after a rain, go out in the field and someone pulls you behind a four-wheeler. And so it's just things that I wouldn't recommend doing as a youth ministry today. We did a generation ago. And so I just encourage you to think about those protective procedures of thinking through what you do before you do it. And also know that there's always going to be someone videoing. I brought my cell phone with me today. People have a phone. They're able to video what's going on, whether that's in a classroom, whether that's at youth camp. They also have the ability at a retreat, at DNOW, at whatever it may be, to also get information back home at a quicker track than normal. So I just encourage you to think about that. And there's some other deeper things that we need to consider in the church. From a legal activity of harassment. You've heard the term harassment a lot in media, and you think of stalking, of course. You think of the extremes, but there is harassment that is not to the same level of extreme, but still needs to be dealt with. And so you need to think about harassment. You need to think about counseling best practices. What is a minister supposed to engage in, and when should someone be referred to a professional counselor? And just thinking about those things. Suicide is one of those hot topics that we continue to see on the rise with all ages in the church, from senior adults all the way down to kids. And so we just need to be aware of what people are struggling with and how to get them the help that they need. You also have the issue of bullying. We're seeing bullying now. 1 out of 5 kids in a public school in America says they're being bullied starting at age 5. Kids say mean things to kids. We understand that. We understand that not everybody comes from a Christian home. We understand not everybody has 2 loving parents in their home. But we also have found that even in the church, Christian kids per se and homes can sometimes also be mean. So I would encourage you to think about that aspect. Brotherhood Mutual has some templates that you could download. I'd encourage you to consider those. A volunteer application I've already mentioned, but you can also download things that help you with social media, a social media policy, and an online connectivity if you have Wi-Fi in your building, text messaging, what is appropriate and not appropriate. So many ways in which we can have problems. You know how to travel well, but that online obnoxiousness is, you might have a grandma who shares too much about her family. You might have a teenager that doesn't know how to engage with others well online. Online is another aspect in risk management that you need a framework to deal with. in the online space, you also need to be sure your insurance is protecting you for all the online exposure, whether it's social media, whether it's online giving, whether it's streaming Facebook Live, the worship service, and as minors on stage, even youth choir, and all those licenses and all those processes that we just don't always think about. Are we being safe in what we are doing? Are we thinking about private apps and other ways in which people connect? And then that can take us to a higher level that we just need to be aware of, and that's mandatory reporting. Every state has different laws with mandatory reporting, but as a minister, you are considered a mandatory reporter. And so you need to know what that looks like. You need to know your local laws. You need to know how to get in touch with child services. You need to know how to get in touch with the right people to deal with the right reporting aspect. Most states, it's within 24 hours of you being aware that there could be a problem. Notice I said could be. You're not the detective. You're not the investigator. You are the reporter. And in the reporter, you do not have to have all the story. You do not have to have all the facts. You just have to have the minor telling you there's a problem, and then you are to report. And as you walk through that, it's a very simple definition, but it's something you need to be aware of to understand what mandatory reporting is, how it functions, and talk to local authorities so you can understand your role in being an advocate for those vulnerable people in our area, and maybe even in our church. Also, I would encourage you to unpack the unexpected. Any given week, we could have a severe weather event. I've had actually Wednesday night church events where we went under a tornado warning. And that's just not something you practice well for, of how to move everybody to a safe place in your building. Some churches have not even thought about where to move in their building. And some of you may be in this class going, I'm not in an area where we have tornadoes. Well, that's great. You might be in an area where you have blizzards. You might be in an area where you have forest fires. You might be in an area where you have hurricanes. But what we need to be aware of is the unexpected from weather event emergencies can happen all the way down to just a kid getting hurt, a senior adult having a heart attack. So you may have defibrillators in your building and you need to check and see if they're charged and have what you need. You need to be aware that when someone pulls up to your building that's a paramedic, they may not know how to navigate your building. You may have terms to identify your building that a person that doesn't go to church working as a first responder would not understand, like fellowship hall, or terminology that is not normal language. Our students meet in the rock. Okay, well, what does that mean? And so walking through that, you need to think about the unexpected in a way people can actually respond to it. And the other aspect that is you need to think beyond safety is you got to think about security. Who needs to know what? Who can be where? Who is looking for outside threats? And so I recommend police officers, if your church is large enough and you want to support those first responder, those community, they're not. It's great to have a officer on property if you can afford it. It's also great to have people in watch care. I call them not security officers. I call them safety watch care, because they're just looking for outside threat. And they're not expected to act on anything. They're not trained as security personnel. They are just there to watch over and walk around and be sure we are aware of our surroundings. We try to keep up with the kids, meaning we try to start with the right number and end with the same number. And so we have to keep up with kids. And it's amazing, a kid that needs a drink of water during the worship service or needs to go to the bathroom, and not always a parent gets up and goes with them. And so we just need to be aware of where kids are and make sure they're protected. We need to make sure that the right people pick them up. This can be a problem with custody if parents are separated or divorced, or there's family issues going on with a grandparent or other family member. We need to be aware who has legal authority to pick up a kid if they're in our care. And so I would encourage you to think about forms that even school systems have, a pickup list, or right protocols to follow with with buses and transportation, to follow with emergency preparedness, to follow with volunteers. There are several things like that that you just need to be aware of in dealing with minors. And those are just some things that help you get started in risk management. It doesn't cover the gamut. It's just a few to help you think. And in the culture we live with gender confusion, in the culture we live with active shooters and school shootings, it is more important than ever that you and I understand that we need to have some risk management plan. We need to understand our facilities were not designed for a lot of today's realities, and that we need to take fresh eyes so we're not negating our negligence. We're not just naive about some things, that we are aware that we have responsibilities. We advertise ministry. We invited people to come in. We're to protect them if they choose to come. And what's that going to look like? So you and I need to review our insurance. We need to look at what we're planning. We need to look at what we're promoting. I encourage you to buy a copy of Protect. There is a chapter in the book, Together We Lead, also on risk, to just kind of help you understand it, but just also know that it is a bigger topic and something that just doesn't need an eye roll, something that just doesn't need, I don't want to deal with it, or a simple response of, well, the Lord takes care of us. I understand the Lord takes care of us. But I've seen churches leveled from a tornado to the ground. I've seen churches in court because a church member did not take care of minors. I have seen a church bus rolled on the highway because tires were not replaced when they were supposed to. You've seen the news stories as well. If you've not, then just get on Google and you can find them. You have seen that not every church has protected well. So I hope and pray that your church is one of those that does protect well, so that people may know about Jesus, have a relationship with him, and follow after him all the days of their life. May you protect well. May you lead well in this administrative endeavor.